Students, this is probably one of the hardest points, I think, in Unit 4, apart from maybe financial ratios. There's a lot going on in the topic of strategic management. The first part is pretty easy. When you get into the scans, which are in a different or separate video, it does get a little bit confusing. But anyway, let's work our way through it. So the first question which is often asked is about generally the purpose and intent of strategic management. So you can see that it is a process which occurs every 3 to 5 years in a business, and it allows the business to take a step back and think about its goals and priorities for the next period of its operations. And to do that, it really does need to assess both internal and external factors within the business itself and the industry which it operates, but also more macro factors to assess the operating environment, to figure out its priorities, and then to develop a plan which achieves those priorities, implement that plan, and then evaluate it. So there's a range of different steps involved, which is basically the course of this PowerPoint. So yeah, it does aid a business's direction and priorities. It does aid things like resource allocation. It does aid the intent of the business, for example, through a focus on research and development. There's a range of things that the strategic plan can do, and generally every business will have one which is constantly being evaluated and updated. So the first section of the strategic plan is generally it is the mission and objectives section. So I'm sure from year 11 you might remember that a business mission is a statement about a company's core purpose, what it does, and its approach to achieving its operation and goals. So it defines its relationship with all sorts of stakeholders, from its customers through shareholders and the community at large. So I just included some examples there because often in the 2024 exam, one of the questions was or in previous exams, a question was asked for you to write a mission statement for a particular business. And there have been other questions as well which have asked you to write a range of objectives. So this is in the same section of the strategic plan. So objectives are the goals which the business hopes to achieve over the period of the plan. They can be, once the plan is implemented, those objectives can be broken down and measured through KPIs or key performance indicators, and evaluated against actual performance, and potentially changed depending on the operating environment and how the business is going. So this was really, I think, a free mark in the 2024 waste paper, because you could pretty much have written anything related to the business and received a mark for it. But if you're doing it well, generally objectives can come from a range of different areas, including financial objectives, market, operations, customers, or things like CSR. And operating sustainably would also be a good objective for many businesses if you are asked to write one. So the next part really in the process is the environmental scan section, which allows a business to assess the operating environment, assess the business itself, to really start looking for opportunities for growth and to gain or regain or maintain a competitive advantage. So the three in the syllabus are PEST, SWOT, and Porters, and they are in the next video. So we'll skip on and assume that the environmental scans have been completed and have led to some really sound information for the business. Then the next section is to use all that information to actually formulate a plan. So the strategic formulation is where the plan is created by a group of people which set out a series of steps to achieve the objectives of the business in line with its mission. So the aim of the formulation process is to create a plan which aids business in its performance. It again is aiming to maintain, gain, or improve that competitive advantage. It is important that it links in absolutely with the goals of the business and the overall mission, And here is where you can delve a little bit deeper and include things like, in that formulation process, you start having to think about things like how we're going to measure performance of the plan, how we are going to think about allocation, how we're going to think about resource allocation, staffing, and a range of other factors. And, absolutely, moreover, how we're going to communicate the plan successfully to all our stakeholders, because it really is a signal about this is who we are and this is who we want to be. So the next stage in the process is obviously once the plan is written, you then implement the plan and put it in place. So here is where absolutely you have to have a very good think about where the resources are going, because you won't be able to achieve the success of the plan without, resourcing it properly. And that may cause resistance to change if it is, changing resource allocation from what was previously normal. So communication, as it says in the slide, is a really, really essential part of the plan to win people over. And if you think about change management, here is where you would bring in things like short-term wins, and rewarding people and rewarding areas of the business who are doing exceptionally in achieving aspects of the plan, by achieving those deliverables in time. And really you are putting solid steps in place here to make sure the plan is successful. So understanding that the plan potentially could go from 3 to 5 years, clearly you need to have mechanisms of evaluation and control. Control is where you measure activities against timelines, you measure resource consumption, you measure all aspects of the plan, and basically make a judgment in the evaluation section about whether or not you are succeeding and meeting your targets, or whether there have been internal and external factors leading to ideally better than projected performance, or you are potentially lagging behind. So again, it's about feedback. It's about using data like financial ratios and financial records. It's taking time, and this is an ongoing process, to collect the data to measure performance. And again, to make sure that the plan is successful and to overcome any resistance, you've really got to celebrate the success of staff and areas of the business that are doing well in meeting the goals and objectives. Cool. So let's move on to a question. So as I said, this was in, it was in 2022 as well. Just one particular, so I was looking through for examples of when this has been asked, and it did strike me that overall this topic has not been asked very much. So that may be a consideration for you in your study. In this case, a couple of years ago, it was to explain how evaluation and control will be required for a business, because it was in the short answer section. Sorry, that should say extended response section. So again, here's another example of a case study. And again, if you are watching this and have the ability to pause and actually do some highlighting, or maybe just jot down notes on a piece of paper about the key aspects of the case study, which will be relevant to strategic planning, and in particular, the evaluation and control section for this business, because that will enable its success. So pause the video now and make some notes, do some highlighting, and I'll show you the next slide in a sec. Okay, so in terms of evaluation and control, this is something that the business owner, Natasha, would need to pay attention to, because she is not confident. So if you've read through this, this is potentially a new online horticulture business, potentially going through a third-party freelancer. So there was another question about SWOT before this in the paper. And the key takeaways here is that she, does have some theoretical knowledge, but has never actually owned a business before. So paying attention to, the core aspects of the planning process will be important if she wants her business to be successful. So that may mean, in terms of evaluation control, if she is following the YouTube and podcast pathway, she would need to have a look at that more closely to see how it's worked, and to maybe focus in on particular podcasts or YouTubes that have received greater numbers of viewers, because that could potentially mean that there's a market, or a greater market, for that aspect of her business than others. So looking at the answer, Again, if you are writing, we're generally going to follow in an explain 3-mark question. We want to try and follow the principle of defining any key terms and then explaining a little bit more about them before in some way linking it back to the case study. So you can see there is a sentence basically defining the evaluation and control section straight out of the PowerPoint, and then we have delved deeper by basically saying what I just said, in that she could look to her YouTube channel and podcasts to see which got the most views to help open new market opportunities and potentially see if creating a membership portal simply for some of the more successful areas is viable. There you go. Hope that helps.